once you get started and you just start that upward climb, there's nothing stopping you but you. And that's what is so hard to see when we look at transition, is that we only look at the right now. So when you're talking about any form of transition, you're only looking a few steps ahead and a few steps behind. Then you literally box yourself into this mindset. You're just feeling the pain now. Embrace that suck for a little while. But once that momentum gets going, holy cow, just here, hold this. Get out of everybody's way.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. All right, what is up, my friends? If you're joining me on YouTube, my wall is completely bland. This has been recorded a couple weeks prior, the 2nd of October. As you guys know, I moved back down to Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, where my wife is from, where our family is, and it is just so awesome to be back here. Thank you so much for the welcoming, the support. A lot of friends down here, a lot of family down here, like I said, so thank you so much. This is the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career, and I have conversations with inspirational people. This is conversation number 103 with Brenda Neckvatal, and she helps Navy SEALs and SEAL-owned businesses with her 501c3 pro bono. We had a great conversation. Brenda, I was actually on her podcast a few weeks ago, and it just came out a couple days ago, and it is so fun to speak with her. She is a civilian that absolutely loves helping the SOF community, and there are so many things here, so many gems that we talked about why she loves helping people. She actually, if we backpedal a second, she figured out and was diagnosed formally at the age of 32 that she was dyslexic, and she was a CDF student, and she actually came back and graduated top of her class and just crushed it. Learned to read in her 30s, all this stuff, and she just doubled her pay in no time at all. And she's a wealth of information. She's super fun, she's super great to talk to, and she helps like no other person. And remember, you can find this conversation and all the other contemplations, which are only on audio. The contemplation's only on audio at kristoflewis.com/podcast or on your favorite podcast app, and you can find yours truly on Instagram at Kristof Lewis. So without further ado, let's rock out this first podcast in the new Office 4.0. Without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
So much fun. We were just talking. It was so fun to be on your podcast, and then we kind of did like a swap, and you're on my podcast now. And what I was saying is so cool about being on this one is that the first one when we moved back to Norfolk, the Virginia Beach area, and we've been wanting to come back here since we left, and I'm so excited to have you as like the first person in the new office. Yeah.
I get to see your blank walls. It's like it's like your empty canvas there.
Exactly.
I'm sure you've already got it designed out though, knowing you.
I do. I have a lot of ideas, but I want to because the last one was so epic, and I had so many people they would chime in and they'd be like, "Oh, that wall is so awesome," and then I was like, I gotta do it better this time. So
I got looking up Pinterest for ideas.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. So, man, but. And now, I'm down here. We're so excited, and it's so cool because I can't wait to get into more about you and what you're doing and your background and everything. But it's just so cool to share this with you because we talk about career transitions on here massively. And I had yet another one just now. I quit my job and we came down here, and it's just it's so cool to share that with everybody listening. So I love that, you have your own podcast, obviously, 2 of them. And I'd love to hear more about that and how you got into that stuff. But it's so cool to be able to share your own story through your podcast and help inspire other people. So speaking of, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit more and telling us about who you are?
Yeah, no, not a problem. So I am a 20 plus year career HR professional. I started off when I was an HR sprout. I kind of did things a little backwards. So I got my foot in the door. It's kind of a challenging career to get into, but I got my foot in the door over with the Fortune 500 company as an admin. But I quickly learned that with the position, a lot of people would consider it a generalist, but not really. So I found out that I was an influencer and I figured out how to build on that. So that's where I learned how to execute the body of human resources. And, that's the hiring stuff, the firing stuff, as far as keying it into the system, HRIS systems, how to interview, how not to interview, how to write people up, how not write people up, benefits, all that stuff, right? So it was really the mechanical side of it. And I decided, I'm like, yeah, I really like this stuff. I want to continue doing it. Well, my boss at the time, he says, well, you don't need a college degree. And I looked at him and I'm like, yeah, that's not what our HR department is saying. So I went back to school. I got my degree. And what was cool is that I had already been exposed to and had done everything that we had been talking about, with the exception of a couple of things. And so I did it backwards. I learned how to do it. And then I had the theology behind it.
Okay.
So I then added a layer and I went and I got my minor in leadership. So my bachelor's is in human resource management. And if that wasn't enough, as a little overachiever that I am, I went out and I got my MBA with a emphasis in human resource strategy.
Okay.
So, and I've tossed around the idea of going for my PhD and being called Dr. Brenda, but I just really don't feel like being in school anymore. So I think I might pass.
I know.
But
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thanks.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I think going back to school is wild. Everybody heard me here. I dropped out of college. I can't remember if that even came up on ours. And then a lot of the careers, obviously.
I can't remember if it
It
did.
it may have, because it's funny because that resonates with me. You said the position that you wanted required it, and a lot of times that's how jobs are. And I don't like to say that I got lucky with the last job I had, because it was it was saying like, you need this. It was like very intricate, and one of them was a 4-year college degree, and I being a college dropout, it was very intimidating to even apply for. But I ended up getting it, utilizing my military career and kind of leveraging that. So it's great to hear, and I love speaking to so many people because it worked for you. Like, that is what you've excelled with, is going back to school. And just for me, I want to give hope for other people, like, just because you don't go the formal education route, that you're able to get some form of success that way as well.
Well, and you're right. And, and the thing is that the best, it was odd you say this, because I was actually talking, I went out to lunch yesterday with a team guy's wife, and we were talking about this. And I said, the best business education I got wasn't in school. It was my 26 years of retail experience layered in, throughout my work. Because in retail, you touch everything. You touch everything from inventory to ops, sales to hiring, right? Termination, reduction of force, time cards, payroll, looking at your sales budget, accommodating, and then you got your inventory rotation, you're looking at shrink. So, I mean, you're really touching everything to it. So I had all of that experience, and then I just, slapped the education on in the background, and it gave me the ability to work for 5 Fortune 500 companies. I've gone as high as being a vice president of human resources, got out of that because I decided that, what I really love and what I'm better at than anything else is consulting. So I have my own consulting practice, and I'm educating. And the nice thing about being in consulting is that when, people want your opinion,
right?
They actually pay you.
They're paying you for it, yeah.
That's right. So I get to give my opinion and my professional opinion and education and help people figure these business problems out. And I get paid for it. And so it's not a bad deal.
And there's so many things I love about that. And I think one of the key things to hone down on is that you did it for 26 years, and you said that's where you got so much of your education from. Did you find that, how was going back to school after all of that? Was it easier for you? Did you kind of whiz through it, or did you still have some difficulties or some obstacles that you faced? Or how was kind of going back to school after all of that experience?
Well, the experience and the knowledge connected all the dots. Just going back to school for me was in and of itself wonderful, because when I was 32, I was finally diagnosed as a dyslexic. So I was,
Yeah.
went from high school as a CDF student to going back into school as an adult. I had to learn how to reread all over again. And I graduated with Latin honors. I graduated magna cum laude. Even my name didn't even have as many A's in it as I got on my report card, right? So it was the best education I got, but it was also the greatest adventure that I was on too, because oh my gosh, it's like it was a barrier that got broken, and boy, on the other side of it was just nothing but possibility, and I went after it vigorously.
Yeah,
and here I am.
And I think that's so wonderful to talk about, because I love talking about education just in general, whether, like we were saying, whether it be formal education, self-education, continued education, all of these things. I'm a huge advocate of just continuing the education in some form or another, and always learning. But to me, what's so unique and very inspirational about your story is that you were that C, D, F student, and maybe getting an A if you're lucky, it sounds like. And then all of a sudden, how was getting this diagnosis? You think you kind of knew what you were working with at that time, and you were able to identify it and then learn easier, better, or how did that help you through learning?
Learning how to reread as an adult sucked. I was gonna say, it was awful. It was uncomfortable. But it was the drive to get through on the other side has always been, I grew up in an environment like most people, but every time somebody told me, no, like you can't do that, I'm like, here, hold this. And I just found a way to get through the end of it, whether I realized that that's what I was doing or not.
Interesting.
I was very, very, very focused on, when you tell me I can't be something or I can't do something, I'm going to find a way subconsciously to prove you wrong, because I do. It's like, but that's a battle. So learning how to reread I learned how to reread using a dictionary. So when I read something and it got all jumbled up, I went back and I started looking up the definitions of the key words in a sentence. And by understanding the definition, I understood the context of what was being said. Once that happened, then everything started falling in place. So to this day, I still read things that are off. I just got, literally before this podcast, I reviewed Seal's resume and sent it off to him because he's putting in for a job. And I texted him, I said, good lick, not good luck.
Is it autocorrect? No.
I know, right? Oh my gosh. And he said, excuse me?
Come again?
Like, good luck. Right?
Like, you can't blame me for that.
I know, but it's like, even still, I used to spell my name wrong and backwards. I used to push my first and my last name together, and every now and again I'll do it, and people look at it like, what is that?
Wow.
Just part of the journey.
Yeah, but like you said, like you were able to take the D, C's, and F's and and graduate at the top. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's super inspirational, and I think that's like one of the things I love talking about is that age doesn't mean anything. Like, I don't care that you don't need to go to college when you're younger. Like we were just saying, like, continued education is the only form of education in my eyes, like, just to continue learning. So to get into your 30s and people are like, oh, my life's behind me. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm about to turn 32 myself, which is the age you said you were diagnosed with that, and or formally, I guess. And it's just like, I feel like I'm barely getting started right now. Like, I'm barely understanding. Like, I was talking about it a couple weeks ago. Like, literally, the more I learn, the more I realize that I have so much to learn, and there's so much I don't know about. So I think it's just that it's every day is day one. You've probably heard that some places before, but every day is day one. And to me, like, that's exactly what that says. Like, blank slate, like you were saying, the background here is a blank canvas, and we have something that we can make out of whatever we want, and don't let it hold you back. And definitely don't be like, oh, I'm in my 30s, I shouldn't probably do that now, because obviously you're such a good example of that.
Well, thank you. But here's the thing too, is that when you do punch through that, so you're talking about at 32 that you were feeling like you're just getting started. At 32, for me, I felt like I was suffocating.
Oh, wow.
Because I knew that I could get past. But what happened is that when I got on the other side of that education, so I graduated in 2009, exactly 20 years from when I graduated from high school. I was 37. And then I went to go work for a Fortune 500 company for 2 years in operations. And I told them, I said, I'm giving you 2 years. If I'm not in an HR role, I'm going to start looking in 2 years. And everybody's like, fair enough. Then I went and I got an HR position in the one job that I have loved above and beyond everything else. It was my dream job. It absolutely was my dream job. And it was also right to leave my dream job, because what I know now today, I never would have gotten job knowledge from that. But here's what happened. I got that job at a salary I never thought in a million years that I would get. And so it's 10 years now? 9 years later, that salary had already doubled.
Wow.
Only 9 years.
Yeah.
Right. And my life isn't over yet. Holy cow. Right. So, once you get started and you just start that upward climb, there's nothing stopping you but you. And that's what is so hard to see when we, look at transition, is that we only look at the right now, because that's all we really focus on. I mean, we plan for ahead, right? But realistically, we're only seeing what's in front of us, and we only look back really at the last 90 days. I mean, we really only recall the most recent 90 days. So when you're talking about any form of transition, you're only looking a few steps ahead and a few steps behind. And then you literally box yourself into this mindset. And it doesn't serve you, right? It's you're just feeling the pain now. So in your world, in your community, it's you embrace that suck for a little while. But once that momentum gets going, holy cow, just here, hold this. Get out of everybody's way.
I know. It reminds me of something, well, at the time of this recording, so today, I wrote something along the lines of, like, when you finally do it, you'll realize, like, wow, I should have done this a whole lot sooner, so should have started pursuing this. And that's what that kind of reminds me of. And I absolutely love that. And speaking of all these career transitions, I want to talk about more about, like, what you're doing now and the community you're helping. Like, so tell me more about what you're doing now and how you got into it, and maybe where you see it going as well.
So when I was working at the dream job, a bunch of us got together and we came up with this really great idea about donating our time as HR professionals to transitioning veterans. And I went, ooh, I'm liking where this is going. What are you thinking? And they said, well, we can sit down, we can do mock interviews, we can help them with their resumes. I'm like, love it, love it, love it. Let's do it. And everybody went, yeah, man, let's do it. And then it died. But at the time, I was working in and out of the DC area, and I had all of these soft related clients, right? So they came in from a soft background, they became government contractors, and some of my teammates were like, I can't work with this guy. He's like really like,
yeah. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
And I'm like, okay. So they're like, I wound up getting these accounts of these, what was labeled as difficult personalities. So I walk in, and the one guy I was talking to, he was a former Ranger, and he's a government contractor, and he had somebody in his team that was driving him absolutely batty, and he just like really wanted to, right? It's like, I want to just do this, but they were a viable risk to the business. And so I said to him, I said, you can't do that. And he goes, what the F do you mean I can't do that? And I said, well, you can, but here's what'll happen. I said, here's what I recommend doing. I said, blah, 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 blah. And it was just very direct. It wasn't fluffy. It wasn't anything. He goes, this is like thank you. He said, because I've been trying to get this answer from people for a while. So then I quickly realized that I had a knack for talking to these folks, right?
Yeah.
Good. A soft background. So the job changed, transitions, went over to the space agency that I worked for as a director of HR. And I thought, okay, so I'm local. I don't want to give this up. In my gut, it was screaming, go work with the SEALs. And I didn't even know what was out there. So I reached out to the Navy SEAL Foundation, and I said, I am a, career professional in HR, would love to find an opportunity, blah, blah, blah. I got introduced to the Honor Foundation, and the Honor Foundation was literally just starting in a few weeks on the East Coast with the very first class. And that is where I came in as one of the first 5 coaches with the THF. And it was a fantastic class. I mean, we got home every night and I was so dang excited I couldn't sleep.
That's so cool.
It was just, the format was fantastic. Did that for a little while, had a little bit of a hiatus, and realized that there was also a need for guys to talk to people and understand how to become entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen, and I mentioned this in a podcast episode actually that I did on the PR Lady and HR Lady Walk Into a Bar episode with David Rutherford from Team Never Quit, when he was a host on that. I explained that what I see in this community is that they're broken into thirds. So they have one of 3 different mindsets. Number one, they want absolutely nothing to do with the government, and they really want to get out into the economy and find, a position that aligns with their skill set. And then you've got gentlemen team guys that want to stay in doing what they absolutely love. And so they pursue the government contracting route. Mm-hmm. And then you've got a third of them that really just they don't want to do either, or they want to do their own thing. Yeah. And so those are your entrepreneurs, and they all have the entrepreneurial spirit, every single one of them. But that's really how I see it consistently broken down.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that latter thing that you did say is a lot of the guys I talk on here. I would say definitely the SEALs. I think almost all the SEALs I've talked to on here are entrepreneurial in one way or another, because they're that type A, like you're talking about that. And it's so it's so funny to describe it like that. Yeah. But like, that is so good for when you want to go out there and you want to get something done. Because number one, with that background of any type of SOF, or for the most part, any type of military, is you have this, just, you want to go, you know how to work hard, you know how to work long and get things done. Yeah. And then especially in that community, in that niche, you know how to not only, because you can't just work hard and long, you have to work focused, and you have to work on the right thing, and you have to know what the right thing is to work out. So when you take that and then you get guidance from somebody like you, then you're able to really focus down and continue to niche down and figure out what you want to do. And those guys and girls are so successful and that's why I love having those kind of people on here, because it's so great to show hey, you have all these opportunities. You don't have to, because I don't know if you see it, and I'd be interested to see what you say about this, but a lot of times I talk to people and they're like, I can only work doing what I did before. Like, am I going to go contract somewhere, or am I going to do something like that? But I think if you look outside of the box and you don't think so linearly, I only have this skill set, but if you take a step back and you think outside of the box and you go, let's just apply the mindset in general to something that I enjoy, then you're very successful. Do you see anybody struggling with trying to figure out what exactly they want to do, or do they kind of know what they want to do?
So between the work that I've done at the Honor Foundation and with the entrepreneurial work and guidance that I've done with the other foundation that I started called Phase 2, I have never heard a team guy say, I can only do this kind of work.
Good.
I've never heard that, ever, not once. What I do hear is I haven't yet quite figured out exactly what lights me up again, because those guys, and I just had this conversation about a month ago with a retired command master chief, 30-year veteran, right? And I'm like, so what's lighting you up? He says, I've been out now 2 years and I still haven't figured it out. I said, You want to know what the answer? He goes, I would love to know the answer. And I said, because you loved being a SEAL. You haven't yet found anything that rings that bell for you. And he goes, you're absolutely right. He says, and I don't want to do contracting. I don't want to go on deployments. I don't want to. So he's still figuring out. The good news is that, he's got enough tenure and he's not in a situation to where he's, financially impacted by it. But, he's got the ability to take that time to figure it out. But just nothing has yet. Yeah. He's keeps trying all these things, which is great. Okay. But nothing has resonated yet, right? And that's 30 years of doing something you love.
And that, I mean, that's a long time.
That's a divorce.
Yeah, right.
That's a divorce.
So that's like a really drastic example of what I was talking about. And I was kind of like, people I was thinking about were not necessarily just seals, but I've heard it in other communities as well. So it's cool to hear that people from that community are not having really an issue figuring out what they want to do, and they are applying that mindset. But obviously it still happens. I mean, I think... and you kind of answered this question already, so he's still looking is what you said, but what I was thinking before you kind of answered that was like, I was like, maybe because he has this quote unquote safety net where he doesn't really need to do something, where he hasn't really found something. Because a lot of times when you have no other choice and you're like, I just need to make money, you kind of figure something out quicker because you have to support yourself, you have to support your family. But I think when you do have the leisure of not being able to do that, then that's an awesome place to be at. And then hopefully I would find, or hopefully I would hope that you find something that you actually really like to do, as opposed to just trying to make money and, you know, feed your family.
Well, and you know what? I wouldn't necessarily say so. I know this person extremely well. We've become extremely good friends, and like I wouldn't say that this individual is in a position to where not having anything coming forward for him is a luxury to one degree, but he's not complacent about it either.
Okay. Very interesting. I believe that. Yeah.
He is
being deliberate.
It's like dating, holding out for the right guy.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to explain it, though, you know, right? Especially if you do have that leisurely.
That's what job hunting is all about. It's like dating.
But that's such a good, that's such a great example of it, like not being black and not being white. Like you don't have, it's not ones and zeros, right? Like you can have this kind of like, let's be patient. Like if we're talking about soft again, you could be like, you're not just going to pull the trigger like a million times, right? You're going to wait till your reticle is on target, and then you're going to pull the trigger nice and easy, right? You're going to squeeze the trigger, and you're not just going to be like, bah, 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 bah. So I think that's a good mentality to take to it as well. And I love to hear that. And it's so cool that there's people out there like you, that you yourself have niched down and you're helping people like this and able to give them that opportunity. Because the more people you talk to, the more information you have, the more data and the more analytics you have and the more you can help people in general. So the more people you help, the more people you can help, because the more stories, the more examples you've heard. And I think that's so cool about what you're doing. And you obviously love it. I mean, you're so fun to talk to about it. And like you said, you came home, you said, you yourself, you came home and you're so excited you couldn't sleep. And that's what I want people to find. Like, there's a million reasons I started this podcast, but you only have to look to that one example of what you said. You come home, you work, do something you love, like find something like that, you know?
Yeah, I absolutely love this. It's what keeps me, it is what livens me up. And there's some long, hard hours. I mean, I have literally in the last 18 hours have reviewed 12 resumes because people are like, can you please take a look at this? Can you please take a look at this? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, okay, got it. And then at the time of it, I'm exhausted, but it's a great exhaustion.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm tired, I'm spent. I don't even think I have an idea anywhere fluttering in my head, but then I'll get something like literally after I got done, and right before this started, I got we're attending a networking meeting tomorrow with a new team guy that I just started talking about, is getting into UAVs. He's a specialist in it from the career, but he wants to expand out. He sends me a screenshot of his new business card, and it is totally rad. And he's like, what do you think about it? And I got lit up all over again. I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful.
That stuff is
right?
cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. Right? So it's just, you know, I love watching these guys continuously evolve.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take anything to push somebody in that direction. We just literally point them they point them north, and they go.
How cool is that?
It's so cool to watch them do it.
That's so cool. But that's like, and you just like naturally, well, you've talked about it a lot inadvertently, but just helping other people. That's like, I don't like having people on the show that just like going out there and doing what they love. Like, I'm so happy for you and I want you to do that. And that's what this podcast is about. But it's also about taking that and using that momentum of doing what you want and being happy about doing what you want to do, and then helping other people. And what's again so cool about you and your story, of which is your life, is that you're able to do all of that wrapped up into this one thing. Like, you're able to go do what you like and help other people. It's like me doing this podcast. I really like podcasting. I like talking to people, and then it helps
fun.
people, by default, because I have awesome guests like yourself. So like, that's so cool. But like, my question to you is, where did this like, I just want to know, like, why do you love help? Like, why do you choose to help people? Why do you not just go out there and do what you want to do? But it's so cool that you go out there, and I guess, I mean, your job is to help people by default. So I guess that's kind of the answer.
In the human business there.
Yeah. But it's interesting why you do that on such a great scale, on such a grand scale.
So I've never been one to openly talk about faith and religion, and believe it or not, as an HR pro, you really shouldn't.
Yeah, right.
Right. I know that's kind of crazy. It's like the last thing you want to do is introduce discrimination in the workplace on religion, and you're the one, talking about it. Anyway, so it gets a little so there's some topics out in this world that we know are a little bit taboo. If you don't want to get in an argument, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, and those things. That's my business. But I will share this.
Well, feel free, please. Please.
Yeah, I grew up. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I had very, very few friends. I had a very nice man as a father who was a public figure and caught a lot of heat for doing the things that he did. And he was expanding and building a hospital system in a very small town. And with that being said, I did, I kind of got a little bit beat up growing up as a result. But anyway, as a kid, I always gravitated to, there were 3 parables that we learned in church. And I always gravitated towards the story of the Good Samaritan. Always. And when I was bored because I didn't understand the sermon when I was little, I'd open it up. I opened the Bible up to where it was, and I'd read it all the time. And I just liked it, I don't know what it was. I just liked it. And so I have literally lived my life along the parable. But what I found out about 2 years ago, I didn't even know this to be true. But what I learned is that the Samaritan was not a well-respected individual in biblical times. They were actually considered a lower form of life, far beneath any slavery that was taking place. I mean, animals had a higher position in the hierarchy of the world than a Samaritan did.
Why is that?
So here, I have no idea. So you have a Samaritan who is, the bottom of the pit of the scourge of the earth, right? Stopping to help a man who is beaten up, puts him in an inn, pays for it, and doesn't ask for a single thing back. And so as an adult, that resonated when I learned it. I was like, holy cow. Yeah. And, being in a position that I was where I didn't have a lot of friends and there was a lot of, scrutiny cast. I mean, it's a small town. It's people think
that's
differently.
Unfortunately, I come from a small town too. I get it.
Right. And so, I had to develop thick skin as a kid. And I didn't like how I grew up in school and all that stuff. So, it was just kind of like to hear about the Samaritan side, and I'm not comparing myself to that at all, but it's just like, that's a person that comes from a hard knocks life. I came from a hard knocks life, and that just made the story even more impactful. Yeah. So it's always about, we have to help each other out in this world. Yeah. We have to. No man is an island. I don't care what you say. As much as I don't like accepting help, I do because I understand that. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And the thing is that I don't ask for anything in return. I get great friendships as a result of it. And I didn't have those before. Yeah. But I have these wonderful friendships in a community where I still consider myself just a guest. And I can close my eyes and I know in a heartbeat that these guys have my back. Yeah. Now, how cool is that? How lucky am I?
The tables have drastically turned because that's the people you want to have on your side.
Exactly. It's handy sometimes.
If those kids come back from middle school picking on Brenda, they're gonna have some next thing coming to them. God.
Yeah. So every now and again, I'll be with somebody, and the people who know me are kind of like. At first, I felt like, is she with the seal? I can't tell. It's just really funny. Yeah. And
that's why I love asking that, because everybody's backgrounds, everybody's lives are so drastically different, and there's a million different reasons to want to help. But I love asking it because, like I say, I always want to encourage helping other people. And I know where mine comes. I was bullied as a child too. Like it sucked. From like age I can start remembering things to about 9. It was just constant constant. Felt like an idiot.
Yeah.
Occasionally physical stuff. He did break my collarbone, but also a lot of the worst stuff was the mental stuff, as probably most of us can attest to, because it stays with you forever, right? The bones heal, classic sticks and stones thing. So so I absolutely love that, and I've loved everything you've shared with us today. It's been incredible, and you're doing great things out there, and I'm so excited that I was able to get you on here after I was so graciously on your podcast. But for more people, or for people that want to hear more about you and get to know you and maybe utilize you to help them, how can they find you and the companies that you have created?
No problem. So I'm pretty easy to find. First off, I think I'm the only Brenda Neckvatal in the country. So it's not hard to figure out how to get a hold of me. You just have to know how to spell my last name. So my name is spelled Neck, like the thing you want to choke, V as in Victor, Atal. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've actually gotten quite active on LinkedIn. You'll find me there. You can find me on Instagram at Best Practices in HR. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube under Best Practices in HR, or my name, Brenda Neckvatal. The podcast shows are a lot of fun. Podcast, you can find the HR version of it is Best Practices in HR podcast, or Best Practices in Human Resources podcast. It's the big pink block. You can't miss it. And then the other podcast I do with the sister of a team guy, her name is Sharon Chira. I call her Chai Tree Chira. And that's the PR Lady and HR Lady Walk Into a Bar podcast. And that one's a lot of fun. And that's out there as well. And my website is bestpractices.work.
There's so much awesomeness happening in there, but I really love the podcast title, the second one there. Isn't that so fun? Great. I really like it. It's so fun.
We tested that, and because she called me up, she goes, "We're going to do a podcast together." And I met her at SHOT Show in 2018. I had no idea who she was. Yeah. Didn't know her brother. And then, 18 months later, she's like, "Okay, we're going to business. We're going to do a podcast." I'm like, "Great. What are we going to call it?" And I said, "How about a PR lady and an HR lady walk into a bar?" And she goes, "Oh my God, that's awesome."
It is good.
Everybody I talk to loves it. The opening is fun. It's a blast.
So fun. All right, Brenda, like I said, thank you so much. This was a really fun podcast. I didn't expect anything less. We had a blast when I was on your podcast, and we have a good time when we talk on the phone too. So I was really looking forward to it. You're easy to talk to. You're doing so much good in this world, and in a community that, all the communities need it, but it's so cool to see you niche down, and I encourage people to do that as well, where they find things that they absolutely like, a little niche that you love to help and that makes you happy. Go find that and do it. So thanks so much for being on here.
No, thank you for having me. We're gonna have to do this again.
I'm down. I am down. Well, have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
See ya.
Missing someone is as normal. Missing someone